The night it all broke started like any other, quiet, ordinary, almost painfully normal. The city outside my apartment windows hummed the way it always did after sunset. Cars slid through wet streets, their headlights dragging across the ceiling in slow, white streaks. The rain had started just after 6, a thin, steady drizzle that turned everything beyond the glass into a blurred painting. Inside, the place felt too big for two, let alone one. Our wedding invitations sat in a neat stack on the dining table, next to a half-burned candle and an empty wine glass. I remember staring at the gold lettering of our names, running my thumb along the edge of the cardstock, and feeling something I hadn't wanted to name for weeks. Distance, not dramatic, not explosive, just distance. Lena had been pulling away in small, quiet ways, fewer texts during the day, the way her phone always seemed face down. The late nights at work events that never used to exist. It wasn't some sudden shift. It was more like watching a dimmer switch slowly turn down on the person you loved. But that night, I told myself to stop overthinking. She texted me a couple of hours earlier. "Babe, girls' night with Megan and the others. Don't wait up, okay? I love you." I stared at the message for a full minute before replying. "Okay, have fun, love you too." I set the phone down, got up, poured myself another drink. The ice clinked against the glass in the quiet, a small, lonely sound that somehow made the apartment feel even emptier. The TV was on, but muted. Some sitcom laugh track flickered silently across the room, while the rain tapped against the windows. The only real sound came from the fridge humming and the occasional car passing below. I found myself listening for her keys in the lock, even though she'd told me not. I never heard them. What I heard instead was a notification, a short, sharp vibration on the coffee table. It wasn't my phone. Her iPad was still here, buried under a couple of magazines. She always left it at the apartment unless she needed it for work, which she didn't tonight. That was one of the things I loved about us. The small habits that felt permanent, solid. I almost ignored it. Almost. The second vibration broke whatever promise I was trying to keep to myself. I reached over, pushed the magazines aside, and there it was, her lock screen lighting up the dim room. A preview banner slid down from the top. "Can't stop thinking about you tonight. Still can't believe last time." I saw the first few words and felt my brain stall. Everything in the room seemed to sharpen at once. The rain. The low hum of the fridge. The slight flicker of the TV light. It was like my senses turned up just as my chest caved in. I picked up the iPad. My thumb hovered over the screen. This is nothing. It's probably Megan being stupid. It's probably some group chat, but I already knew it wasn't, because right under the message, where the sender's name should have been, was a contact I didn't recognize. Ethan Jim. She doesn't even go to the gym, I remember thinking. Not like that, not enough to have someone saved that way. I tapped the message with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. The iPad unlocked without asking for a password. Her messages opened straight into the thread. The scroll bar on the side was microscopic. There was so much there. At first, I only took in flashes. "I can still feel your hands on me in the car. Next time we're not sneaking out early, we're staying until the end. Can't believe we actually did that. I've never felt so alive." I scrolled, my throat tightened. There it was, a photo of a dimly lit living room, colored bulbs in the corners, couples in various states of undress in the background, laughing, holding drinks. In the middle of it, slightly blurred but unmistakable, was Lena, her red dress, the one she told me she was saving for the honeymoon. She wasn't alone. She was pressed against a man I'd never seen before, his hand low on her back, his mouth close to her ear. Her head tilted back, eyes closed, mouth open in a way I'd never seen when she was with me in public. The caption under the photo made my stomach drop. "Can't wait for the next party." Same place. I blinked at the screen, my vision swimming. A swingers party. She was at a swingers party behind my back, and it wasn't the first time. I scrolled further and found dates, weeks, months. Mentions of last time, of the couple with the tattoos, of the room upstairs with the mirrors. There were jokes about vanilla life and your poor fiancé who has no idea. That last line hit like a slap. Your poor fiancé who has no idea. I stopped scrolling. The room started to tilt. I put the iPad down carefully, like it was something that might explode if I let it slip. My hands were shaking so hard that the glass on the table rattled when I reached for it. I took a sip of my drink and tasted nothing. The rain outside had gotten heavier. Sheets of water ran down the glass, blurring the city into shapes and smears of light. I found myself staring at our reflection in the window, the couch behind me, the empty chair where she usually curled up with her laptop, the faint outline of my own face. I looked like a stranger whose life had cracked open in the quietest way possible. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting, no broken plates. Just an empty room, a glowing screen, and a man realizing the person he was about to marry had already left him in ways that counted. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovered over her name. Every part of me wanted to call. To scream, to demand every detail, to ask why she needed that when we were right here, planning a life, choosing table linens, arguing over playlist songs for the reception. Instead, I put the phone down, very gently. Then I got up, walked over to the dining table, and picked up one of our wedding invitations. The gold letters blurred as my eyes filled, but I could still make out the date, the venue, the promise implied between the lines. I held it over the candle. The flame took its time, licking the corner before the paper caught. It curled in on itself slowly, blackening and folding, little gray ashes drifting onto the placemat. I watched it burn until the fire reached our names. Then I blew it out, the room filled with the faint smell of smoke and wax. I stood there in the half-dark, listening to the rain, the sound of distant traffic, and the echoes of the words on the screen still ringing inside my skull. I've never felt so alive. My phone buzzed once on the table, a new message lighting up the screen. "Babe, we're staying out later than planned. Don't wait up, okay? I'll make it up to you tomorrow." I stared at her words, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, my chest tightening with something that was part grief, part clarity. Then, without really planning it, I opened the calendar app and scrolled to our wedding date. My finger hovered. Delete event. The question stayed on the screen, simple and cold. Outside, thunder rolled low in the distance, the sky flickering. I swallowed, my eyes stinging, my heart pounding in my ears, and then I tapped delete. The screen went blank. The invitation ash on the table shifted in a small breath of air from the window. Somewhere across the city, she laughed at something someone said, surrounded by people who had no idea I existed. In the quiet of that empty apartment, with the rain beating against the glass and the smell of burned paper in the air, one thought settled over me with terrifying calm. Tomorrow she would come home to a life that no longer existed. Morning came gray and slow, the kind of light that doesn't really brighten a room, just softens the edges of everything. The rain had finally stopped, but the streets outside still glistened, reflecting a pale sky and tired. I hadn't slept, not even for a minute. I spent the night sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the iPad, then my phone, then the door and back again. Every time I closed my eyes, that photo flashed behind them, her in the red dress, his hand on her back, her head tilted in a way I'd thought belonged to us. At some point around 3 a.m., I stopped opening the messages. It wasn't that the shock faded, it just changed. The initial sting gave way to something quieter, heavier. Not rage, at least not yet, more like grief that had nowhere to go. On the table in front of me, the ash from the burned invitation sat in a small, warped pile. I hadn't swept it away. It felt like proof, evidence that, at least once in my life, I had taken decisive action instead of just waiting for things to fall apart on their own. Her key turned in the lock a little after 8. Soft, familiar, casual, I didn't move. "Hey," she called, her voice bright but tired. "Babes, you awake?" The roads were crazy. She stopped when she turned the corner and saw me at the table. There was a pause, not long, maybe a second or two, but in that small gap of silence I watched her eyes take in the room, the burned edge of the placemat, the iPad on the table, the invitations, and me, sitting completely still, hands flat on the surface, staring at nothing. Her smile died in stages. "Okay," she said slowly, dropping her bag onto the floor. "You're up early." I finally looked at her. Her makeup was smudged. Not a lot, but enough to suggest the night had blended into the morning. Her hair was tied up in a messy knot. She smelled like perfume and cigarette smoke, and a hint of someone else's cologne clinging faintly to the fabric of her jacket. "I'm up," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. She shifted, uneasy. "Is everything okay?" The iPad lit up with a soft glow as the screen timed out and woke again. The message thread was still open, Ethan's name hovering at the top like a headline. Her eyes flicked to it. That was all it took. Her face went white. "Okay," she whispered again, but this time it meant something else. "Okay, just tell me what you saw." I swallowed. Enough. She closed her eyes. For a moment she looked like someone who'd just been told a diagnosis she'd always suspected, but never wanted confirmed. "How long?" I asked. The words felt blunt and stupid, the kind you ask even though you already know they won't make anything better. She pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, leaving more space between us than usual. The empty chair to my right, the one she usually curled up in, suddenly looked like a third person at the table. "A few months," she said quietly, "on and off." "A few months of what? Parties, him, both." Her hand went to her forehead. I don't know how to explain it without sounding like a monster. "Dry." Silence stretched between us. broken only by the distant sound of a bus braking outside, the squeal echoing faintly through the glass. "It started as a joke," she said finally. "Megan made some comment about this underground scene, like these private parties. I thought it was ridiculous. I laughed it off. And then one night, they dragged me along, and I still thought it was ridiculous until you didn't." She flinched. "It wasn't supposed to be serious," she whispered. "It was supposed to be this stupid, wild, I don't know phase. I thought if I could just get it out of my system before the wedding, everything would feel more stable." I stared at her. "You cheated on me so the wedding would feel more stable." She winced like I'd hit her. "I know how it sounds. But it wasn't about replacing you. It was about," she searched for the word, coming up empty, "about feeling something different before committing to one thing forever. It's selfish. I know that." "And him?" I asked. "Ethan." She blinked. "You saw his name." "I saw enough of everything." Her shoulders sagged. "He was just there," she said. "At the parties, at first it was just flirting, then it wasn't. He knew the rules, the boundaries, it felt detached. Like this separate life that didn't affect you." "You talked about me," I said, "in those messages." Her jaw tightened. "I never meant to hurt you." I laughed once, a sound that cracked in the middle. "You went to a swingers party behind my back. You kept going. You talked about me like I was some clueless extra in your movie, but you never meant to hurt me." She had no answer for that. The silence that followed felt different from the ones we'd been having for weeks. Those had been full of unspoken tension, small resentments, things unsaid. This one was full of truth, heavy and undeniable. "I canceled the wedding," I said. Her head snapped up. "What?" I nodded toward the table, to the little gray pile of ash. "Last night." Her eyes filled instantly. You can't just, we can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can." "I didn't just cancel the venue," I said calmly. "I canceled us." Her face crumpled. "Please don't say that," she whispered. "Please, I was stupid, I was reckless, I was scared. Everyone talks about how marriage is forever, and I panicked. I wanted to feel free one last time, and then I'd lock it all away and be who you needed me to be. I didn't ask you to be anyone but yourself." "Exactly," she said, voice sharp with sudden self-loathing. "And this is who I am. Someone who screws up the one good thing in her life because she's afraid of not having an escape hatch." We sat there breathing in sync but miles apart. "Who else knows?" I asked. She shook her head. "No one, just the people there. No family, no friends outside that circle." "So when you were smiling at cake tastings with my mother, choosing flavors, you were what, replaying those parties in your head?" "Don't do that," she said, eyes shining. "Don't rewrite everything. I loved those moments. I love you. You don't do this to someone you love." She flinched again. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. I need you to understand that this wasn't about you being enough or not enough. It was about me being broken and stupid. You don't get points for knowing you're broken." Something in her seemed to collapse at that. The light coming in through the window shifted slightly, catching the edges of the ash, the gold lettering on the remaining invitations, the small, trembling movement of her hands. The apartment felt like a crime scene, except the body on the floor was a future no one would ever see. "So what now?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I took a breath. The answer had been forming in the hollow ache of the night, solidifying with every passing hour. "Now," I said slowly, "you pack a bag. You go stay with Megan or whoever else you trust not to lie to your face the way you lied to mine. And I start figuring out who I am without you." She stared at me stunned. "That's it?" she asked. "Just like that?" "It wasn't just like that when you decided to go to those parties," I said. "This is me catching up." Tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. For once, she didn't reach for me. She just sat there and let herself unravel. "I thought we had time," she said, voice cracking. "Time to fix it before it got this far." It already got this far. Her gaze dropped to the ash again. "I'll go," she murmured. She stood up slowly, the chair legs scraping softly against the floor. The sound felt final. As she walked down the hallway to our bedroom, her footsteps were the softest they'd ever been, as if she were trying not to disturb the ghost of the life we almost had. I stayed at the table. For a long time, the only sounds were drawers opening, zippers, the rustle of clothing, the ordinary noises of someone leaving. On the table, her iPad lit up again with a new notification. Last night was insane. "When's the next one?" It was from Ethan. My stomach twisted, but something inside me had shifted from raw hurt to a strange, cold clarity. I opened the message thread one last time and typed, "This is Lena's fiancé. There won't be a next one." I hit send, 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then vanished, then returned. Damn, I'm sorry, man. For what it's worth, she talked about you a lot. Said you were a good guy. I stared at the words, the casual empathy from a stranger who had touched her in ways I hadn't known about. I deleted the whole thread, then I wiped the device. By the time she came back into the living room with a small suitcase, the iPad was dark, blank, a clean slate that felt like a cruel joke. I'll send for the rest of my stuff, she said, her voice drained. I nodded. She hesitated at the door. Can I hug you? She asked. The question hung between us like a fragile bridge. For a moment I almost said yes, out of habit, out of love. Out of the aching need to feel her close one more time before everything changed for good. Instead, I shook my head. I can't, I whispered. She closed her eyes. Okay. She stepped out into the hallway, the suitcase wheels bumping over the threshold. The door clicked shut behind her with a soft finality that echoed louder than any slammed door ever could have. I sat there for a long time, staring at the space she'd just vacated, the faint smell of her perfume still hanging in the air. Then I pulled out my phone, opened a map, and started searching for something I'd never thought I'd need, a place to disappear to, somewhere far enough that the city lights, the rain on our windows, and the ghost of her laughter wouldn't follow every time I closed my eyes. I didn't leave right away. Disappearing isn't as dramatic as it sounds. There's no sudden fade to black, no clever montage. It's paperwork and emails, quiet resignations, boxes, forwarding addresses, and long, silent elevator rides with neighbors who don't know they're watching you vanish from your own life. I found a small, furnished apartment across town first. Top floor of an old building, with thin walls and a view of nothing in particular, just rooftops, satellite dishes, and a slice of the sky that always seemed a little too pale. The hallway smelled like dust and stale cooking. The radiators hissed at odd hours. The floors creaked when I walked. It was perfect, anonymous. I took a leave from work, citing personal reasons. They didn't press. They'd seen the engagement photo stuck to my desk. People connected the dots. Some sent texts. Heard something happened. Here if you want to talk. I replied to almost none of them. The days blurred, rainy mornings, gray afternoons. Nights where the city outside my new windows hummed in a slightly different key. This place didn't have our memories embedded in the walls. No trace of her perfume in the hallway. No stack of invitations on the table. Just empty rooms and the soft buzz of the... I slept on the couch for the first week, not because the bed was uncomfortable, but because the couch felt like less of a commitment. The bed implied staying. The couch meant I could still pretend this was temporary. In the quiet, I replayed everything. The way her face had fallen when she saw the iPad, the tremor in her voice when she said, "I never meant to hurt you." The hollow sound of the door closing behind her. Some nights anger flared up like a match. I thought about all the times she'd said she was tired from work while I cooked dinner alone. All the evenings I'd planned small surprises, her favorite dessert, a movie she'd mentioned, a playlist I'd made for us, while she sent messages to a man saved as Ethan Jim. Other nights the anger faded, replaced by something softer and stranger. I missed her, not the her who lied, who snuck out to private parties, who treated my trust like a safety net. I missed the version of her who used to fall asleep with her head on my chest and her hand wrapped in my shirt. The one who cried during movies and pretended she wasn't. The one who called me from the grocery store to ask which brand of coffee I liked because she'd forgotten. Grief, it turns out, isn't very logical. 3 weeks after I moved, she found me. It was a Saturday morning, the kind with weak sunlight and the sound of distant traffic drifting up through the half-open window. I'd made coffee and was standing by the sink, watching the steam curl up and disappear into the... The buzzer startled me. It almost never rang. No one had this address. I walked over, pressed the intercom. Yeah. Silence for a second. Then her voice, "It's me." For a moment I thought I'd imagined it. My brain filled in the gap with memory. But then she spoke again, a little louder. "Please just let me up. I know you probably don't want to see me, but I just need 5 minutes, I swear. If you still want me gone after that, I'll disappear." Disappearing, that had been my plan. I pressed the door release. Her footsteps echoed up the stairwell. Softer than I remembered, or maybe that was just my heart pounding in my ears. I opened my door before she reached it, standing in the frame, half a barrier, half an invitation. She looked different, tired, thinner maybe. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup. She wore an oversized sweater I recognized as mine, sleeves covering her hands. Her eyes were red-rimmed, the kind that hadn't seen real sleep in a while. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We stood there looking at each other like strangers who shared a history but no present. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment suddenly felt smaller with her in it. She looked around, taking it all in, the plain furniture, the bare walls, the suitcase still half unpacked in the corner. "So this is where you disappeared to," she said softly. "It's just temporary." "Is it?" I didn't answer. She moved toward the window, resting her hand on the sill, staring out at the rooftops. "You can't see much from here," she murmured. "That's kind of the point." She nodded as if that made sense. A moment passed. "I went by the old place," she said. "The landlord said you'd moved out completely. No forwarding address. Your number works, but you don't answer." "I know. I tried your parents, your brother. You told them not to give me anything." "I did." She swallowed. "Okay," she said. "So you really meant it. You really planned to just evaporate." "I didn't evaporate," I said. "I relocated. To nowhere. Nowhere is better than where I was." She flinched at that. The air between us thickened with all the things unsaid. "I'm not here to beg you to take me back," she said finally. "That's good," I said. "Because I can't." Her eyes closed briefly. I figured. "Then why are you here, Lena?" She turned to face me fully. "Because I've been going to therapy," she said. "Real therapy, not the kind where you just vent and feel better for a day. The kind where you have to rip yourself open and look at the ugly parts and not flinch." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and I needed to tell you something," she said. "Not because it fixes anything. Not because it earns me anything. Just because you deserve to hear it from the version of me who at least understands what she did." I waited. She took a breath. "I thought those parties were about freedom," she said. "About not feeling trapped. Turns out they were about avoidance. About not having to sit with the discomfort of commitment, of vulnerability, of actually telling you when I was scared instead of numbing it with adrenaline. I don't need a post-mortem on your choices." "You might not," she said. "But I do, because I have to live with myself after this. And part of that is owning that I hurt the one person who made me feel safe, because I didn't know how to feel safe without chaos." Her voice shook, but she didn't cry. "That night," she continued, "the one with the red dress, I kept waiting for it to feel wrong enough to stop. It wasn't like I didn't know it was wrong. I did. Every second I knew. But everyone there kept telling me, it's just fun, it's just bodies, it doesn't mean anything." And I clung to that because the alternative was admitting I was blowing up my life for nothing. I stared at her. "Did it mean anything?" I asked. Her answer came without hesitation. "Yes," she said. "It meant I wasn't the person I thought I was. It meant I was capable of betraying someone kind. It meant I'd rather burn everything down than sit in the discomfort of being seen. And it meant I was a coward." The word hung in the air. "You're not saying anything," she said quietly. "What do you want me to say?" I asked. "That it's good you're working on yourself. It is, honestly. I hope you keep going. I hope you become someone you're not ashamed to look at in the mirror." "And us?" she asked, almost a whisper. "There is no us." She nodded, a small, resigned movement. "I knew you'd say that," she said. I had to hear it from you, not from the silence of your unanswered calls." She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes. "I'm not here to beg," she repeated, "but I am here to say I'm sorry in a way I wasn't capable of before. Not the panicked sorry of someone afraid of losing comfort, the real one, the one that knows it's too late." Her voice thickened. "I'm sorry I made you feel small in your own life. I'm sorry I treated your trust like something I could borrow and return when I was ready. I'm sorry I turned our relationship into something that happened in the gaps between my secret life." I swallowed hard. My chest ached in a way that felt familiar and new all at once. "I loved you," I said. She smiled sadly. "I know, I think that's what hurts the most." We stood there, barely a foot apart, islands separated by something invisible and impenetrable. "Have you seen him?" I asked suddenly. "Ethan." She shook her head. "No, I blocked him. I stopped going. I haven't touched that world since the day I left your apartment." "You didn't stop for me when we were together." "I know," she said. "And that's exactly why I don't deserve you now." The room felt too small, the air too dense. She glanced at the couch, the suitcase, the bare walls. "You really cleared out," she said softly. "No photos. No reminders. I couldn't breathe in the old place." "Do you remember," she said, "that morning we got the keys to that apartment? How excited we were. We sat on the floor eating takeaway, talking about where we'd put the couch and the bookshelves and the plants we'd kill in a week." I did remember. More vividly than I wanted to. "That was real," she said. "Whatever else I did later, that part was real." "I know," I said, "and that was the worst part." She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting in the sleeves of the sweater. "I won't come back again," she said. "I won't bother you. I just needed to stand in front of you once, not as the girl defending herself, but as the woman who knows exactly what she lost." A tear finally escaped, sliding down her cheek. "I lost you," she said simply, "and I have to live with that." She turned toward the door, something in me tugged. "Lena," I said. She paused, hand on the knob. "Yeah." "Do you regret it?" I asked. "The parties, him, all of it. Do you actually regret it, or do you just regret getting caught?" She didn't turn around. Her shoulders rose and fell in a shuddering breath. "I regret every second I chose something temporary over something real," she said. "I regret not being brave enough to tell you I was scared instead of acting like a teenager with a death wish. I regret that when I think about my life 10 years from now, the only constant I see is this, knowing I had a chance at something steady and kind, and I set it on fire." She finally looked back at me, eyes shining. "I don't regret getting caught," she said, "because if I hadn't been, I'd still be lying to you, and now at least one of us gets to live honestly." She opened the door. "Goodbye," she whispered. "Goodbye." She stepped into the hallway. For a second before the door closed, morning light from the stairwell spilled into the apartment, hitting the floor in a sharp rectangle. Dust motes floated in the beam, small and aimless. Then the door clicked shut and the light vanished. I stood in the silence she left behind, the faint echo of her words lingering like a song fading down a hallway, unsure if what I felt was relief or a fresh kind of grief. Time did what time always does. It moved whether I wanted it to or not. Days stretched and folded into weeks. The city cycled through its moods, rain streaking the windows, sunlight bouncing off windshields, evenings painted in soft orange and violet before fading into neon and shadow. Inside the small apartment, something slowly shifted. At first, everything was marked by her absence. 2 coffee mugs in the cupboard instead of 4, an empty hook where I hung my jacket, the other one bare where hers would have been, a quiet phone. The silence that used to feel suffocating began, gradually, to feel less like an enemy and more like space. Space to breathe, to think, to exist without constantly bracing for impact. I started walking in the mornings. Not for fitness or any noble purpose, just to move, to feel the pavement under my feet, the cool air in my lungs, the city waking up around me, the bakery on the corner that opened at 7. The bus stop where the same woman in a blue coat waited every day, the stray cat that lounged in the sun like it owned the block. Life continuing, without fanfare, without asking my permission. Some mornings, I found myself replaying old conversations with her in my head. The night we talked about names for future kids on the balcony, our breath fogging in the cold air. The lazy Sunday we spent arguing over which lamp to buy, as if choosing the right lighting would guarantee a certain kind of life. The way she used to say my name when she was half asleep, like it was something safe to hold on to. The memories hurt less over time, but they didn't vanish. They just softened. In therapy, a place I never thought I'd end up but eventually walked into on a Wednesday afternoon, I learned that forgiving someone isn't the same as letting them back into your life. That forgiveness can be a quiet, private thing, not a reunion, not a grand gesture. At first, the word felt impossible. Forgiveness. It sounded like letting her off the hook, like erasing what she did, like saying it didn't matter. But slowly, sitting in that small office with its soft lighting and box of tissues that never moved, I started to understand that forgiveness was less about her and more about me. About not carrying the weight of what she did in every step I took for the rest of my life. One morning, months after she'd stood in my doorway and said goodbye, I woke up before dawn. The apartment was dim and quiet, washed in the cool blue of early morning. The city outside hadn't fully woken yet. The traffic was a distant murmur. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, made coffee, and leaned against the counter, watching the steam rise. The sky outside the window began to lighten gradually, darkness giving way to a pale, almost fragile glow. Morning light, for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like an accusation. It felt like a beginning. I sat at the small table and pulled out my phone, not out of habit this time, but with intent. I scrolled past old threads until I found her name. I hadn't blocked her. I just hadn't used it. My thumb hovered over the screen. I thought about all the nights I'd imagined sending her a furious message, listing every hurt, every betrayal, every small detail she probably didn't even remember, but that had carved itself into me. I thought about her standing in this very apartment, eyes tired but clear, telling me she didn't deserve me. I thought about the ash of our invitation on the table that night, the rain on the old windows, the way the city had watched quietly as my life bent in a direction I never planned. And then I started typing. The message was short. Not a speech, not a plea, not an opening. Hey, I don't want anything from you. I'm not writing to reopen anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm okay. I'm healing. I hope you keep doing the work you talked about. I don't hate you, but we're done. Take care of yourself. I read it 3 times. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like setting something down. I hit send. The little delivered confirmation appeared. I locked the phone and set it face down on the table. Outside, the sky had shifted to a soft gold, the light spilling over the rooftops, catching on windows, ironing out the harsh edges of buildings. The morning painted everything with a tenderness it hadn't earned but still offered. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug and let the quiet fill the room. No dramatic swell of music, no sudden revelation, just calm. At some point my phone buzzed. I didn't rush to pick it up. When I finally did, her reply was there. Thank you, I'm glad you're okay. I'll respect your boundaries. I'm still in therapy. I'm trying to be better. You were good to me. I'm sorry I couldn't be good to you. I won't reach out again. I hope you find someone who treats your heart the way you always treated mine. I read it once, then I deleted the thread, not out of anger, out of acceptance. She had been a chapter, a big one, beautiful in places, ugly in others, complicated throughout, but not the whole story. I stood, walked to the window, and opened it a crack. Cool air slipped in, carrying the faint smells of coffee from a nearby cafe, car exhaust, wet pavement. The city sounded alive. I realized, standing there, that for the first time since I'd found those messages, I didn't feel like someone things only happened to. I felt like someone who could choose where to live, who to let in, what to carry forward and what to leave behind in the quiet rooms of memory. Empty chairs would still remind me of her sometimes. Rain would still drag me back to that night with the iPad and the burned invitation. But morning light was mine again. I took a deep breath and stepped away from the window, the soft glow behind me casting long, gentle shadows across the floor. Letting go wasn't a single moment. It was a series of small decisions, made in silence, in empty rooms, in the space between one heartbeat and the next. That morning, with the city waking up and the past finally beginning to loosen its grip, I made one more. I picked up my keys, opened the door, and walked out, not to disappear this time, but to step into a life that, for the first time in a long time, felt like it belonged to me. Not to disappear this time, but to step into a life that, for the first time in a long time, felt like it belonged to me.